Chapter 6 There were days and nights, scant food and scanter water. There was Duani, and there was Shandakor. I lost my fear, and whether I lived to occupy the chair or not, this was something to have seen. Duani was my guide. I was tender of my duties because my neck depended on them, but there was time to wander in the streets, to watch the crowded pageant that was not, and to sense the stillness and the desolation that were so cruelly real. I began to get the feel of what this alien culture had been like and how it had dominated half a world without the need of conquest. In a hall of government, built of white marble and decorated with wall friezes of austere magnificence, I watched the careful choosing and the crowning of a king. I saw the places of learning. I saw the young men trained for war as fully as they were instructed in the arts of peace. I saw the pleasure gardens, the theaters, the forums, the sporting fields, and I saw the places of work where the men and women of Shandakor coaxed beauty from their looms and forges to trade for the things they wanted from the human world. The human slaves were brought by their own kind to be sold, and they seemed to be well treated, as one treats a useful animal in which one has invested money. They had their work to do, but it was only a small part of the work of the city. The things that could be had nowhere else on Mars, the tools, the textiles, the fine work in metal and precious stones, the glass and porcelain, were fashioned by the people of Shandakor, and they were proud of their skill. Their scientific knowledge they kept entirely to themselves, except what concerned agriculture or medicine or better ways of building drains and houses. They were the lawgivers, the teachers, and the humans took all they would give and hated them for it. How long it had taken these people to attain such a degree of civilization, Duani could not tell me. Neither could Rule. It is certain that we lived in communities, had a form of civil government, a system of numbers and written speech, before the human tribes. There are traditions of an earlier race than ours, from whom we learned these things. Whether or not this is true, I do not know. In its prime, Shandakor had been a vast and flourishing city with countless thousands of inhabitants. Yet I could see no signs of poverty or crime. I couldn't even find a prison. Murder was punishable by death, said Rule, but it was most infrequent. Theft was for slaves. We did not stoop to it. He watched my face, smiling a little acid smile. That startles you, a great city without suffering or crime or places of punishment. I had to admit that it did. Elder race or not, how did you manage to do it? I'm a student of cultures, both here and on my own world. I know all the usual patterns of development, and I've read all the theories about them. But Shandakor doesn't fit any of them. Rule's smile deepened. You are human, he said. Do you wish the truth? Of course. Then I will tell you. We developed the faculty of reason. For a moment I thought he was joking. Come, I said, man is a reasoning being, on Earth the only reasoning being. I do not know of Earth, he answered courteously, but on Mars man has always said, I reason, I am above the beasts because I reason. And he has been very proud of himself because he could reason. It is the mark of his humanity. Being convinced that reason operates automatically within him, he orders his life and his government upon emotion and superstition. He hates and fears and believes, not with reason, but because he is told to by other men or by tradition. He does one thing and says another, and his reason teaches him no difference between fact and falsehood. His bloodiest wars are fought for the merest whim, and that is why we did not give him weapons. His greatest follies appear to him the highest wisdom, his basest betrayals become noble acts, and that is why we could not teach him justice. We learned to reason, man only learned to talk. I understood then why the human tribes had hated the men of Shandakor. I said angrily, "Perhaps that is so on Mars, but only reasoning minds can develop great technologies, and we humans of Earth have outstripped yours 1,000,000 times. All right, you know some things we haven't learned yet, in optics and some branches of electronics, and perhaps in metallurgy, but—" I went on to tell him all the things we had that Shandakor did not. "You never went beyond the beast of burden and the simple wheel. We achieved flight long ago. We have conquered space and the planets. We'll go on to conquer the stars." Rule nodded. "Perhaps we were wrong. We remained here and conquered ourselves." He looked out toward the slopes where the barbarian army waited, and he sighed, "In the end, it is all the same." Days and nights and Duani, bringing me food, sharing her water, asking questions, taking me through the city. The only thing she would not show me was something they called the place of sleep. "I shall be there soon enough," she said, and shivered. "How long?" I asked. It was an ugly thing to say. "We are not told. Rule watches the level in the cisterns, and when it's time—" She made a gesture with their hands. "Let's go up on the wall." We went up among the ghostly soldiery and the phantom banners. Outside there were darkness and death and the coming of death. Inside there were light and beauty, the last proud blaze of Shandakor under the shadow of its doom. There was an eerie magic in it that had begun to tell on me. I watched Duani. She leaned against the parapet, looking outward. The wind ruffled her silver crest, pressed her garments close against her body. Her eyes were full of moonlight, and I could not read them. Then I saw that there were tears. I put my arm around her shoulders. She was only a child, an alien child, not of my race or breed.
"John Ross."
"Yes?"
"There are so many things I will never know."
It was the first time I had touched her. Those curious curls stirred under my fingers, warm and alive. The tips of her pointed ears were soft as a kitten's. "Duani."
"What?"
"I don't know." I kissed her. She drew back and gave me a startled look from those black brilliant eyes, and suddenly I stopped thinking that she was a child, and I forgot that she was not human, and I didn't care. "Duani, listen. You don't have to go to the place of sleep." She looked at me, her cloak spread out upon the night wind, her hands against my chest. "There's a whole world out there to live in. And if you aren't happy there, I'll take you to my world, to Earth. There isn't any reason why you have to die." Still, she looked at me and did not speak. In the streets below, the silent throngs went by, and the towers glowed with many colors. Duani's gaze moved slowly to the darkness beyond the wall, to the barren valley and the hostile rocks.
"No."
"Why not? Because of rule? Because of all this talk of pride and race?"
"Because of truth. Corin learned it."
I didn't want to think about Corin. He was alone. You're not. You'd never be alone. She brought her hands up and laid them on my cheeks very gently.
"That green star, that is your world. Suppose it were to vanish, and you were the last of all the men of Earth. Suppose you lived with me in Shandakor forever. Would you not be alone?"
"It wouldn't matter if I had you." She shook her head.
It would matter, and our two races are as far apart as the stars. We would have nothing to share between us.
Remembering what Rule had told me, I flared up and said some angry things. She let me say them, and then she smiled.
It is none of that, John Ross.
She turned to look out over the city.
This is my place and no other. When it is gone, I must be gone too.
Quite suddenly, I hated Shandakor. I didn't sleep much after that. Every time Duani left me, I was afraid she might never come back. Rule would tell me nothing, and I didn't dare to question him too much. The hours rushed by like seconds, and Duani was happy, and I was not. My shackles had magnetic locks. I couldn't break them, and I couldn't cut the chains. One evening, Duani came to me with something in her face and in the way she moved that told me the truth long before I could make her put it into words. She clung to me, not wanting to talk, but at last she said,
Today there was a casting of lots, and the first 100 have gone to the place of sleep.
It is beginning, then. She nodded.
Every day there will be another 100 until all are gone.
I couldn't stand it any longer. I thrust her away and stood up. You know where the keys are. Get these chains off me. She shook her head.
Let us not quarrel now, John Ross. Come, I want to walk in the city.
We had quarreled more than once, and fiercely. She would not leave Shandakor, and I couldn't take her out by force as long as I was chained, and I was not to be released until everyone but Rule had entered the place of sleep, and the last page of that long history had been written. I walked with her among the dancers and the slaves and the bright-cloaked princes. There were no temples in Shandakor. If they worshipped anything, it was beauty, and to that their whole city was a shrine. Duani's eyes were rapt, and there was a remoteness on her now. I held her hand and looked at the towers of turquoise and cinnabar, the pavings of rose quartz and marble, the walls of pink and white and deep red coral, and to me they were hideous. The ghostly crowds, the mockery of life, the phantom splendors of the past were hideous, a drug, a snare. The faculty of reason, I thought, and saw no reason in any of it. I looked up to where the great globe turned and turned against the sky, keeping these mockeries alive. Have you ever seen the city as it is, without the shadows?
No, I think only Rule, who is the oldest, remembers it that way. I think it must have been very lonely. Even then, there were less than 3,000 of us left.
It must indeed have been lonely. They must have wanted the shadows as much to people the empty streets as to fend off the enemies who believed in magic. I kept looking at the globe. We walked for a long time, and then I said, I must go back to the tower. She smiled at me very tenderly.
Soon you will be free of the tower, and of these.
She touched the chains.
No, don't be sad, John Ross. You will remember me and Shandakor as one remembers a dream.
She held up her face that was so lovely and so unlike the meaty faces of human women, and her eyes were full of somber lights. I kissed her, and then I caught her up in my arms and carried her back to the tower. In that room where the great shaft turned, I told her, I have to tend to things below. Go up onto the platform, Duani, where you can see all Shandakor. I'll be with you soon. I don't know whether she had some hint of what was in my mind, or whether it was only the imminence of parting that made her look at me as she did. I thought she was going to speak, but she did not, climbing the ladder obediently. I watched her slender golden body vanish upward, then I went into the chamber below. There was a heavy metal bar there that was part of a manual control for regulating the rate of turn. I took it off its pin. Then I closed the simple switches on the power plant. I tore out all the leads and smashed the connections with the bar. I did what damage I could to the cogs and the offset shaft. I worked very fast. Then I went up into the main chamber again. The great shaft was still turning, but slowly, ever more slowly. There was a cry from above me, and I saw Duani. I sprang up the ladder, thrusting her back onto the platform. The globe moved heavily of its own momentum. Soon it would stop, but the white fires still flickered in the crystal rods. I climbed up onto the railing, clinging to a strut. The chains on my wrists and ankles made it hard, but I could reach. Duani tried to pull me down. I think she was screaming. I hung on and smashed the crystal rods with the bar, as many as I could. There was no more motion, no more light. I got down on the platform again and dropped the bar. Duani had forgotten me. She was looking at the city. The lights of many colors that had burned there were burning still, but they were old and dim, cold embers without radiance. The towers of jade and turquoise rose up against the little moons, and they were broken and cracked with time, and there was no glory in them. They were desolate and very sad. The night lay clotted around their feet. The streets, the plazas, and the market squares were empty, their marble paving blank and bare. The soldiers had gone from the walls of Shandakor with their banners and their bright mail, and there was no longer any movement anywhere within the gates. Duani let out one small, voiceless cry, and as though in answer to it, suddenly from the darkness of the valley and the slopes beyond, there rose a thin, fierce howling as of wolves.
"Why?" she whispered. "Why?"
She turned to me. Her face was pitiful. I caught her to me.
"I couldn't let you die. Not for dreams and visions. Nothing. Look, Duani, look at Shandakor."
I wanted to force her to understand.
"Shandakor is broken and ugly and forlorn. It is a dead city, but you're alive. There are many cities, but only one life for you."
Still she looked at me, and it was hard to meet her eyes. She said,
"We knew all that, John Ross."
"Duani, you're a child.
You've only a child's way of thought. Forget the past and think of tomorrow. We can get through the barbarians. Corin did, and after that..." "And after that, you would still be human, and I would not."
From below us in the dim and empty streets, there came a sound of lamentation. I tried to hold her, but she slipped out from between my hands.
"And I'm glad that you are human," she whispered. "You will never understand what you have done."
And she was gone before I could stop her, down into the tower. I went after her, down the endless winding stairs, with my chains clattering between my feet, out into the streets, the dark and broken and deserted streets of Shandakor. I called her name, and her golden body went before me, fleet and slender, distant and more distant. The chains dragged upon my feet, and the night took her away from me. I stopped. The whelming silence rushed smoothly over me, and I was bitterly afraid of this dark, dead Shandakor that I did not know. I called again to Duani, and then I began to search for her in the shattered, shadowed streets. I know not how long it must have been before I found her. For when I found her, she was with the others, the last people of Shandakor, the men and the women first, were walking silently in a long line toward a low, flat-roofed building that I knew, without telling, was the place of sleep. They were going to die, and there was no pride in their faces now. There was a sickness in them, a sickness and a hurt in their eyes as they moved heavily forward, not looking, not wanting, to look at the sordid, ancient streets that I had stripped of glory. "Duani!" I called and ran forward, but she did not turn in her place in the line, and I saw that she was weeping. Rule turned toward me, and his look had a wary contempt that was bitterer than a curse. "Of what use, after all, to kill you now?"
"But I did this thing. I did it."
"You are only human." The long line shuffled on, and Duani's little feet were closer to that final doorway. Rule looked upward at the sky. "There is still time before the sunrise. The women, at least, will be spared the indignity of spears."
"Let me go with her."
I tried to follow her, to take my place in line, and the weapon in Rule's hand moved, and there was the pain, and I lay as Corin had lain, while they went silently on into the place of sleep. The barbarians found me when they came, still half doubtful, into the city after dawn. I think they were afraid of me. I think they feared me as a wizard who had somehow destroyed all the folk of Shandakor, for they broke my chains and healed my wounds, and later they even gave me out of the loot of Shandakor the only thing I wanted, a bit of porcelain shaped like the head of a young girl. I sit in the chair that I craved at the university, and my name is written on the roll of discoverers. I am eminent, I am respectable, I who murdered the glory of a race. Why didn't I go after Duani into the place of sleep? I could have crawled, I could have dragged myself across those stones, and I wish to God I had. I wish that I had died with Shandakor.